The Tiger Speaks to You, Tales from the Wild Imagination.
Sleeping Beauty, Sleeping Beauty, Sleeping Beauty, sleep.
The Sleeping Beauty, a Grimm's fairy tale. Once there was a king and a queen who had everything their hearts could desire except for a dear child of their own. One time the queen was bathing in the lake, splishing and splashing happily in the water, when a little frog popped to the surface and said, "Hello." "Hello," said the queen, somewhat startled. "I know what you want," said the frog. And what's that?" replied the queen. "You want a child of your own, and I tell you, your wish shall be granted before the year is out." And with that, the little frog hopped back into the water and swam down to the bottom of the lake. The queen went on her way, and indeed, when a year had passed, she gave birth to a beautiful daughter as fair as the morning. Everybody in the kingdom was delighted. They celebrated, they sang, they danced in the streets. There was to be a grand party to celebrate the birth of the princess. Everybody was invited. The king made a special point of inviting the wise ladies of the kingdom. Now, there were 13 wise women of that kingdom, and they knew many secrets. But the king had only 12 plates, 12 shiny golden plates, so he sent out only 12 invitations. The day of the party arrived, and it was a grand affair. There was music, there was dancing, and there was food, such food as you and I have never seen. And here were the 12 golden plates laid out for the 12 wise women. And after supper, everybody gathered around the tree, and it was by this tree that each of the wise women gave their gift to the young princess. The first came and she said, "To you I give beauty." The second came and said, "To you I give the gift of kindness." The third came and said, "To you I give wisdom." The fourth came and said, "To you I give skill." And so on, each of the wise women bestowing a fine gift upon the princess. But before the 12th could offer her gift, there was a loud screeching like an owl, and there was a clanging of windows, and into the hall there came the 13th wise woman. She stood, and with fierce green eyes fixed her gaze upon the king and the queen, and with a voice like a fork scratching upon a metal pan, she said, "You didn't invite me, but I am here nonetheless, and I have brought my gift. I tell you that on her 15th year, princess shall fall down dead. She shall cut her finger on a spindle." And with that, the woman vanished. The doors shut, There was a stony silence upon the hall. But the 12th wise woman appeared, and she said, I have not yet given my gift, and though I cannot completely undo what the 13th wise woman has done, I can soften the blow somewhat. On her 15th year, instead of falling down dead, the princess shall fall into a deep, deep sleep. Well, after this, the king and the queen ordered that all the spindles in the kingdom should be burned, and everybody was only too happy to help. Nobody wanted any harm to come to this dear princess. Well, year after year passed, and eventually 15 years had fallen like leaves from the tree. And it was one morning that the young princess found herself in the attic of the castle. And she saw a room which she had never seen before. And she crept into this room, and strangely it was lit, though there was not a window in it. And there at the bottom of the room was a little old woman with a spinning wheel, and she was spinning. And she had a spindle, and with her spindle she was turning the wool. The princess came towards the woman and said, Old mother, what are you doing? I am waiting. Who are you waiting for? I am waiting for you, my dear. And what are you doing? I am spinning. What are you spinning? I am spinning to make a cloth. Who are you making a cloth for? I am making a cloth for a sleeping princess. And what is that wooden thing that dances so merrily? That is a spindle, replied the old woman. And when the princess went to touch it, her finger fell upon the point, and she cut herself, and all at once she fell down on the floor into a deep, deep sleep. And so, too, did the whole household. The queen and the king, they fell asleep. The servants, they fell asleep. In the kitchen, the cat that was chasing the mouse fell asleep. The dog that was chasing the cat fell asleep. The cook who was clutching the kitchen boy's hair, who had his finger in the apple pie, fell asleep. The sausage, sizzling in the pan, fell asleep. The old clock upon the wall ceased to tick and ceased to talk. All was still. All was silent as bone or stone. And a hedge started to grow around the castle, a thick hedge with briars and brambles and wild roses, thorns, thorns, thorns. And the hedge grew thick and fast, and within it there lay the sleeping beauty, and she would sleep for 100 years until the spell had been broken. Word passed around the kingdom that there was a sleeping beauty, locked in a castle, hidden by a hedge of briar roses, and whomever could pierce through that hedge, they could wake the sleeping beauty. So many brave heroes tried, heroes and heroines all, but the thick hedge was as fierce as a forest of thorns and brambles, and whoever went in, they would not get out. Their bodies would be cut and held fast by the thorns, till only their bones remained. And still the hedge grew thicker, the thorns grew stronger, the brambles grew tighter. The hedge was a fortress, and none could pass. And inside, Sleeping Beauty slept. Well, almost 100 years had passed, and one morning a fine young hero, with courage in his heart, walked to that kingdom, and he was refreshing himself in a tavern, talking to an old fellow. And the old fellow said, "And have you not heard of the castle? The old castle, surrounded by the mighty hedge. Inside there is a sleeping beauty, but none may wake her. My great-great-grandfather told me that long ago men had gone in and they hadn't returned." And these stories filled the young hero with curiosity. His heart flared up, his throat tightened, and he knew that he would have to go in there, and he would have to find the Sleeping Beauty. The old man bent over, his bones shaking and his voice quaking. "Oh, don't go in there. That's a fool's job. It's dangerous. You will die. Stay here where it's safe. Stay here where it's warm." But the young hero could listen only to his heart, and so he set out with his sword, and he came to the hedge, the thick hedge of briars and brambles and thorns, and with his sword he started to cut. And though the brambles and briars cut him back, he cut on, until he had made a path through the hedge, and here and there he could see the bones, the white bones and skulls of those that had fallen. But he was brave of heart, and though the briars and thorns cut him, and though it looked desperate, his heart was beating in his chest, and so he was full of courage. Eventually, he broke through the thick hedge, and he entered into the castle grounds. But all was still, all was stony and silent. There were the guards outside the castle, sleeping. He walked into the castle, and in the kitchen there was the dog, the cat, the mouse, the sausage, the kitchen boy, the cook, all sleeping. There was the clock, tick-tock, sleeping. He went upstairs. He entered the attic, and there was the room, lit though there were no windows or lights, and on the floor he could see a figure covered in a cloth. He pulled the cloth off, and there he saw something that made his heart jump, as if butterflies were in his chest, as if honey was in his mouth, as if the room was filled with light. It was a princess, a sleeping beauty, and as he bent down, he knew that he would have to give one kiss on those sleeping lips. And as he did so, the clock upon the wall started to tick and tock, and the princess opened her eyes, and the mouse chased the cat, and the dog chased the cat, and the kitchen boy pulled his finger from the pie just as the cook pulled his hair, and the sausage sizzled happily in the pan. And the king and the queen turned to each other. They yawned and they said, "Have we been sleeping?" They had slept for 100 years. the sleeping beauty had awoken. She walked down, leading the prince into the courtyard, and she said, "Look, here is my prince. Together we have woken from the dream. The spell is broken." And just at that moment, the thick hedge burst into bloom. 10,000 roses opened all around the hedge. People came from miles and miles, drawn by the sweet fragrance of so many summer roses.
Sleeping Beauty, Sleeping